On the 29th of May 2019, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, announced his cabinet of ministers. The President was lauded for appointing a 50-50 gender-balanced cabinet and also placing women ministers in portfolios traditionally occupied by men. And sitting with me today is Dr. Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, to talk to us about her role and plans for the department. Minister, once again, congratulations on your appointment and welcome to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation.
Good day, and thank you very much for the congratulations and for this opportunity.
Before we can delve into your plans for the department, let's just quickly go back to your interest in politics. For someone who was not interested in politics because they disrupted your childhood, what then sparked that interest to go into politics?
Well, really, I think I've always been encouraged by membership of our organization to take up a leadership role in various structures of our organization. My role has primarily been in the education sector. From the late 80s right through, in every part where we had an education struggle, I would be there. From basic education right up to higher education. So it was really entry to politics through education. My interest has always been to utilize education to change the opportunities and the trajectory, particularly for black people, because education was utilized as a means of harm rather than development and progress among particularly black people in South Africa. So I always believed we should use education as a tool for change, and that was a role I played in NGOs, in mass-based structures. So whenever I had the opportunity, I would utilize my knowledge, qualification and experience in education to advance the goals of development. And education, obviously, in South Africa is a very political subject. So I, began to meet a lot of people who were involved very directly in the struggle, and partnered with them, and eventually became someone who our structures, our branches, our membership felt should take up a political position.
Fast forward to 2019, when you were informed that you are assigned to this current portfolio, what were your initial thoughts?
Well, I have to confess that what happened initially was I sort of put my head down and said, I don't think I heard the president properly, and I was silent for quite a number of seconds. And then I thought, maybe I look rather foolish. I better raise my head and ask him a question. And I said, did you say international relations and cooperation, Mr. President? And he confirmed that he did. So I said, what happened to higher education? And so he told me to reconfigure that department, but that I would be going to international relations. So of course, as we do, you express, your humble privilege at being selected to be in the executive. You ask a few questions and sort of reduce the shock in yourself, and then walk out calmly, because they don't have a lot of time. There are many of us, and you go and reflect. I must say I was stunned.
And then you got the opportunity to meet senior management of the department as well as staff members. Post that, what was then your impression about the department?
Well, I've known the department in my time as a minister in government, in the previous executives, and we've always had a very good relationship. In all the departments I've been, we've enjoyed support from DIRCO, and I've seen its transition from foreign affairs into international relations and cooperation. So it's going to be interesting for me to be the responsible minister in this department. I think they're very good people here, very professional staff, And I believe that this department can make an important contribution to addressing the challenges that confront our country.
How would you say your previous portfolios have equipped you for your current role?
Well, the greatest amount really of international relations that I had experience of was in the Department of Science and Technology. Science and technology is very much an area in which there must be international collaboration, both in research, in innovation, as well as in joint infrastructure initiatives. And of course, in my time there, we were in the process of bidding for the square kilometer array. And we had to seek the help of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to assist us in approaching many of the potential global partners who would eventually be the decision makers on which country would be the selected site for the radio telescope. So in those portfolios, I enjoyed a lot of contact with colleagues internationally. I also participated in a range of fora that are associated with bodies on which I'm getting very detailed comments and briefings now from senior DIRCO officials. So something such as G20 is not unfamiliar to me, nor BRICS, nor many of the structures. However, my knowledge and relationship with multilateral bodies such as the United Nations is a little more limited. We had strong contact when I was Minister of Education, the first time I held an executive portfolio over 15 years ago. So that's going to be a new and interesting area in which to get to know what is underway, what the undercurrents are, and what South Africa's own positioning is with respect to the UN.
Minister, not only have you been vocal about education, but also gender equality is one of the things that you have been vocal about. In your address to the staff members, you also highlighted that women abuse in the workplace will not be tolerated, or any other marginalized group. When or what inspired your gender activism?
Well, firstly, I'm a woman, and I think therefore one is aware of the position that women occupy in society, as well as the constraints and challenges and opportunities that confront them. Because I think we also shouldn't make the issue of gender equity one in which there have been no advances. There have been many, many advances. There's a very strong presence of women in this department, though I noted when I met the Deputy Director General that most of them are male, and this is something that one would need to really look at, because I would like to see women at senior levels in the department. I think it's something that we should always have as part of a department. I also know from my own experience as a woman that you often face a range of constraints, from being called girly by older men, which I once experienced, to your opinions not being taken very seriously. I've been fortunate in that I've not had any attempt of sexually harassing me or demanding sexual favors, because I studied judo at school, and so I'd react very harshly should something like that happen. But I'm aware that many women experience such abuse, and it is something that I think we as leaders need to be vocal about in our organizations as matters that will not be tolerated by any means. And we need to ensure that it is understood. This is why I made it something I mentioned right from the beginning, that any such abuse will not be tolerated, nor covered up, nor justified in any way.
June is such a historical month in South Africa, Youth Month, and Africa is such a youthful continent. And one thing that young people are complaining about is unemployment in our continent, and they even risk their lives crossing the Mediterranean and going to other continents. What do you think African leaders can do to prevent that? Because we are experiencing an African brain drain.
We have no dearth of policy on the African continent. Agenda 2063 places young people at the heart of the actions that the continent must undertake. What we must do is convert framework to implementation. We must ensure that we don't articulate vision and not have action associated with it. I saw a speech in which Minister Sisulu, the former minister, said this, and I firmly believe that what we as leaders must achieve on the African continent is a set of concrete steps that address the interests, the hopes, the aspirations of young people on the African continent. We must improve education, we must expand education, we must ensure there's skills training. We have a paucity in technical and vocational education. There must be action there. We must have a stronger artisan core. So the whole range of areas. And then of course we must grow business activity. We must build more institutions. We have very few institutional mechanisms that are robust in many of our countries. We have too narrow an economic activity. And I think as DIRCO, we've got to put at the heart of our work economic opportunity, economic diplomacy. And when we set performance targets, we must be asking each of our missions, what are you doing to contribute to more business formation, to more job opportunity, to more skills development for South Africa, and in particular for young people. So I believe that there are steps that we can take. I also think we should use the international opportunity far more than we're doing for young people to enjoy skills training. We should have thousands of young South Africans all over the world. And I know there are countries that are interested in providing these opportunities, but we've not always taken them up robustly. So we should see young people going out there. But there must be the condition that they come back and service our country, come back and establish enterprises. We must diversify the understanding of what opportunity is among young people. It's not just finding yourself in a public service department, but also creating new businesses, working in incubation hubs, establishing innovative approaches. There's so many things that should be available to young people, and we need to connect with them and their ideas and their sense of what they would like to do. And I think there tends to be a disconnect rather than establishing real links intergenerationally or by government departments with young people where they associate and work in their various formations. I know, for example, of young people that work in a forum that focuses on the green economy. There's a very tenuous government link between them and what they're doing, and yet the green economy offers such opportunity. We should strengthen that link and look at what countries have advanced with respect to the green economy. What has Germany done with respect to solar energy? What is Estonia doing in biotechnology? How do you bring young people in touch with those experiences so that this nascent thinking of theirs becomes something that matures and is an actual concrete business activity?
You've also spoken, Lisa, about South Africa being a product of international solidarity. Sadly, right now there are nations who are still fighting for their freedom, the likes of Western Sahara, Palestine. What lessons can they take from South Africa, and what could be our role also in raising our voice?
I think one of the things that certainly could be an important lesson is certainly that international solidarity that I referred to, but it's also mass struggle. It's also ensuring that in your society you are organized in a way to resist collectively. Because relying solely, we didn't rely on one a strategic aspect of the struggle. There were many elements to it. Mass formation, we had the underground, then you had international components of the struggle. All of these have to work together in a coordinated and coherent fashion to begin to deliver the results. So we should continue with solidarity with the people of Palestine, with the people of Sahrawi. They must assist our solidarity by being organized and enjoying popular support in their communities. Then we must also engage powerful nations that we meet with in international fora to persuade them that the inhumanity faced by people who are still confronted by colonization is something that the world should not tolerate. Given that we adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights many, many decades ago, it's surely intolerable that 50 or 60 years later, you still have people suffering the conditions experienced by the people of Palestine or indeed by the people of Sahrawi. So I think we need to ensure, as we are on the international stage, that we are spokespersons and representatives on behalf of those who continue to suffer the oppression and lack of human rights, but that they too are so organized that they can be a partner with us, because we cannot wage their struggle only as South Africa. It has to be together in cooperation, ensuring that we do in the end have a resolution of the challenges that face them.
And looking back collectively at our history as an African continent since the formation of the OAU in 1963, how would you rate peace and security in the continent currently?
Well, I think if one looks at the African continent, one appreciates that there has been a great deal of progress. The fact that a number of countries now have open and democratic elections, which are often declared free and fair, is an important step forward. However, as Africa, we suffer from underdevelopment. Our people do not enjoy true economic opportunity. We have poor infrastructure in many of our countries. Women do not enjoy full human rights. So we are confronted by very difficult and complex problems. But there are many green shoots and signs of hope. The largest number of countries that have positive growth in the world are now on the African continent. This is great. What are these lessons? How do we then ensure that they also impact on other countries on the continent? But the success that we see is still quite early shoots. We would like to see all 54 African countries working for development, focused on our people's condition, and ensuring that we end war and insecurity. Part of our concern is that we've begun to become a space where terrorism is rearing its head, and I think this is extremely worrying. There are groups that have a fascist orientation that have taken hold in some countries on the continent, using religion as the basis for some of their very negative attitudes and their threat to communities. These need to be resisted. So we need to improve our security armor. We need to strengthen our intelligence ability. We need to collaborate effectively as countries on the continent to ensure that these practices do not spread to other parts of Africa, and to ensure that we get rid of such groups from our countries, because they will reduce the successes that we had begun to achieve should they take hold. Many of them have antediluvian ideas about development, and particularly about women's position in society. So none of them should be allowed to thrive on the continent, and I think we must be resolute in the fight against terrorism and any terror group in any African country.
And as a country, South Africa, looking at our position at the UN Security Council and us chairing the AU in 2020, how do we use our position to advance the African agenda as well as socio-economic development?
Well, as South Africa, wherever we are, we must never neglect to assert that our primary concern as we engage in international relations is the status of Africa and its position in the world. Africa is at the heart of our international relations, and this is extremely important for us to assert consistently. So our position on the UNSC must seek to advance an African agenda, and the institution that really I think is the repository of the agenda of Africa is the African Union. So we must look at how we strengthen it so that it can execute Agenda 2063. It should modernize. I think the steps taken by Rwanda as chair to begin a process of modernization of the African Union, strengthening its institutions. These are very important steps that each of us must support, and we as South Africa must continue that modernization, must continue that institutional formation, because often the inability to move with continental agenda programs is related to the weakness of institutions. And so ensuring that we have the capacity, the competence and capability to advance an African agenda is a vital, I believe, a role that South Africa should play as it chairs the AU in 2020.
And Minister, Pretoria hosts the second largest foreign diplomatic missions, and these missions are your clients. How are you going to manage the relations between them and the department?
I think the department already has a program that one would, really associate oneself with. We should have regular interaction with ambassadors. The number is so large that I don't think it would always be possible to have individual meetings, but certainly as they are perhaps organized into regional groupings, it might be easy then for me as minister to meet with the Africa ambassadors, those from Europe and so on a regular or annual basis. And then I think there should be occasion, as there is, where all of us gather together for the fun ministers' dinner that is hosted after the State of the Nation address. But I think on a business-to-business level, one should look for a neater means of interfacing with the diplomats so that we can have some discussion about whether our relationship is at a positive level, whether it's outcomes oriented, and whether there's more that we should be doing. As I said, I would like to use diplomacy to contribute to my country's development priorities, and my interaction with the diplomats should be to seek to achieve that, but also to ensure that where we can make a contribution, particularly with respect to the African continent, to the development priorities of countries on the continent, we should understand those priorities and actually act on making them a reality.
And finally, Minister, you are not alone in the department. You will be working with your two deputy ministers. And now, after the whole initial shock and putting your head down, would you say you're ready to hit the ground running? And have you had a plan together with them?
Oh, certainly we've already met, and I think we have two really fantastic deputy ministers. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to work with Deputy Minister Mashego Dlamini and Deputy Minister Alvin Botas. I have worked with him in the National Executive Committee. Previously we're deployed together to the Western Cape. So we've done lots of door-to-door work together. He's an energetic young man. And Deputy Minister Mashego Dlamini is extremely experienced in government. She's held many senior positions as an executive member. So I'm going to benefit from their experience, and I'm sure we're going to have an excellent time together at DIRCO.
Thank you so much, Minister, for making time, and we will keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.